The Trump portion, I still haven't decided if I'm going to put them together. I'm probably going to separate them out because 35 minutes times 2, that's a long time to watch one individual video, but we'll see.
We welcome you back now to the CNBC News Special, the Commander-in-Chief Forum. Tonight we're speaking with the two major party presidential nominees to find out where they stand on the critical issues. So now, please welcome the Republican nominee for President, Donald Trump. Good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us. You heard me say to Mrs. Clinton, Secretary Clinton, and it didn't completely work out toward the end there. As much as possible, I'd like you to tell our veterans and our people at home why you are prepared for the role of Commander-in-Chief and try to keep the attacks to a minimum. We've had a year of that and maybe 60 more days of it.
To a minimum, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. To a minimum. I guess that's a question of definition.
I guess.
Anytime you interview a president, sitting or past president, they will tell you that the most daunting
Was I
part...
supposed to answer this question?
No. I mean, just keep the attacks to a minimum. Anytime you talk to a president, they'll tell you the most daunting part of the job is the role of Commander-in-Chief.
Right.
What have you experienced in your personal life or your professional life that you believe prepares you to make the decisions that a Commander-in-Chief has to make?
Well, I've built a great company. I've been all over the world. I've dealt with foreign countries. I've done very well, as an example, tremendously well dealing with China and dealing with so many of the countries that are just ripping this country. They are just taking advantage of us like nobody's ever seen before. And I've had great experience dealing on an international basis. I look today and I see a Russian plane circling our planes. They're taunting us. I see in Iran, I see the boats taunting our ships, our destroyers.
But what have you done in your life that prepares you to send men and women of the United States into harm's way?
Well, I think that...
All right, he's not answering questions already. And Matt Lauer's going to try again.
The main thing is I have great judgment. I have good judgment. I know what's going on. I've called so many of the shots. And I happened to hear Hillary Clinton say that I was not against the war in Iraq. I was totally against the war in Iraq. You can look at Esquire magazine from '04. You can look at before that. And I was against the war in Iraq because I said it's going to totally destabilize the Middle East, which it has. It has absolutely been a disastrous war. And by the way, perhaps almost as bad was the way Barack Obama got out. That was a disaster.
People talk...
All right. 2 minutes in, he told his first lie. I refer you to his Howard Stern interview where he was for the war in Iraq. And he's also now disparaging Obama. Jeez. Next.
Talk about you and Commander-in-Chief, and not just Secretary Clinton, but your Republican opponents in the primary season, and they wonder about your temperament. They say, does Donald Trump have the temperament to be Commander-in-Chief? You said something recently that I found interesting. You admitted that sometimes in the heat of a debate or when you're talking about a lot of issues, you say things that you later regret. So can we afford that with a Commander-in-Chief, to have a Commander-in-Chief who says things that he later regrets?
Well, when you say regret, yeah, sure, I regret. But in the meantime, I beat 16 people, and here I am. So, you know, to a certain extent, there is a regret. I would have liked to have done it in a nicer manner. But I had 16 very talented people that I had to go through, and that was a lot of people.
But when you say
that was a record, Matt, that was a record in the history of Republican politics. I was able to get more votes than anybody ever has gotten in the history of Republican
But when you
politics,
say inflammatory things in a presidential campaign, it's different than saying them when you're Commander-in-Chief. If you say things you regret when you're Commander-in-Chief, you can spark a conflict, you can destabilize a region, you can put American lives at risk. Can we afford to take that risk with you?
Well, I think absolutely. I think if you saw what happened in Mexico the other day, where I went there, I had great relationships, everything else. I let them know where the United States stands. I mean, we've been...
That's not true. That's not true. There's a controversy regarding that. There was supposedly an agreement not even to talk about building the wall and who was going to pay for the wall. So if you had the cojones, why would you make an agreement? That should have been the first thing you talked about. So that's another falsehood.
Badly hurt by Mexico, both on the border and with taking all of our jobs, or a big percentage of our jobs. And if you look at what happened, look at the aftermath today, where the people that arranged the trip in Mexico have been forced out of government. That's how well we did.
Back in August,
and that's how well we're going to have to do, Matt.
Back in August, when you admitted that you regret some of the things you said, you also said this: I can promise you this, I will always tell you the truth.
It's true.
So let me read some of the things you said. I know more about ISIS than the generals do. Believe me. Was that the truth?
Well, the generals under Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton have not been successful.
Do you know more about ISIS than they do?
I think under the leadership of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, the generals have been reduced to rubble. They have been reduced to a point where it's embarrassing for our country. You have a force of 30,000 or so people. Nobody really knows, but probably 30,000 people. And I can just see the great, as an example, General George Patton spinning in his grave as ISIS we can't beat.
Yeah, you said if we had MacArthur today, or if we had Patton today.
Let me stop there. He didn't answer the question. He definitely didn't answer the question, and Matt Lauer let him get off the hook and is going to pose another question.
We would not have ISIS. That the rise of these military commanders that we have today, they come up the chain of command, and by the time they get to the top, they're too politically correct. And we know that's not a compliment coming from you. Have you lost faith in the military commanders?
I have great faith in the military. I have great faith in certain of the commanders, certainly, but I have no faith in Hillary Clinton or the leadership. You look at what's happened, and, you know, when she comes in and starts saying, oh, I would have done this, I would have done... She's been there for 30 years. I mean...
All right, so he obviously said that he doesn't have faith in the commanders, though he tried to nuance it. And this attack on Clinton and Obama is going to continue. I have a feeling with every single answer that he gets. Let's continue.
We need change, Matt. We have to have it, and we have to have it fast.
Let's go to Hallie Jackson in our crowd. Hallie.
I'm with Philip Clay, who was a public affairs officer in the Marine Corps. He spent a year in Anbar province in Iraq. He left the military with the rank of captain, service that inspired him to write a book. He's a Democrat, and he has this question for you, Mr. Trump.
Mr. Trump, over the past 15 years, a lot of U.S. troops have bled and died, securing towns and provinces from Iraq to Afghanistan, only to have insurgent groups like ISIS spring back the moment we leave. Now, you've claimed to have a secret plan to defeat ISIS. But you're hardly the first politician to promise a quick victory and a speedy homecoming. So, assuming we do defeat ISIS, what next? What is your plan for the region to ensure that a group like them doesn't just come back?
Joe, I mean, part of the problem that we've had is we go in, we defeat somebody, and then we don't know what we're doing after that. I mean, we lose it. Like, as an example, you look at Iraq, what happened, how badly that was handled. And then when President Obama took over, likewise, it was a disaster. It was actually somewhat stable. I don't think could ever be very stable. It's a war we should have never gone into in the first place. But he came in, he said, when we go out, and he took everybody out. And really, ISIS was formed. This was a terrible decision, and frankly, we never...
Okay, see, and that's where we start getting the bullshit. Number one, it was a Bush that basically made the agreement to leave Iraq. It was Bush that was unable to negotiate a status of forces agreement in the agreement to leave Iraq. So all Obama did basically was follow through on something that George Bush did. There is no way in the world that a single U.S. soldier should have been left in Iraq without a status of forces agreement. I don't give a shit what anybody says.
Or even got a shot. And if you really look at the aftermath of Iraq, Iran is going to be taking over Iraq. They've been doing it, and it's not a pretty picture. And I think you know, and because you've been watching me, I think for a long time, I've always said, shouldn't be there, but if we're going to get out, take the oil. If we would have taken the oil, you wouldn't have ISIS, because ISIS formed with the power and the wealth of that oil.
How are we going to take the oil? How are we going to do that?
You would leave a certain group behind, and you would take various sections where they have the oil. They have.
You can't do that because, number one, you need a status of forces agreement. Number two, if you sit there and take the oil, you are going to be considered an aggressor nation when they want you to leave their country. And number three, it's theft. There's no way the Muslims would have, I'm talking about ISIS, the Shiites, the Sunnis, and everybody else would have banded together to go after you, the Americans that would have left there, okay, because they were stealing their oil. And then on top of that, you're going to have the soldiers that are going to be operating the oil pumping stations, loading up the oil trucks and driving the trucks to where? You're not going to drive them back through Iraq. So you're going to have to drive them across the border to some other country. The logistics of trying to do that are so ridiculous, it's like comical.
People don't know this about Iraq, but they have among the largest oil reserves in the world, in the entire world. And we're the only ones. We go in, we spend $3 trillion, we lose thousands and thousands of lives, and then, Matt, what happens is we get nothing. You know, it used to be to the victor belong the spoils. Now, there was no victor there, believe me, there was no victor. But I always said, take the oil. One of the benefits we would have had if we took the oil is ISIS would not have been able to take oil and use that oil.
Let me stay on
to
ISIS.
fuel them.
No, you dummy. ISIS would have had the support of the Iraqi people because they would have said that America is stealing their oil, and they would have been right.
Let me stay on ISIS. When we've met in the past and we've talked, you say things like, I'm going to bomb the expletive out of them very quickly. And when people like me press you for details, like that gentleman just said, on what your plan is, you very often say, I'm not going to give you the details because I want to be unpredictable.
Absolutely, the word is unpredictable.
But yesterday, you actually told us a little bit about your plan in your speech. You said this, quote, we're going to convene my top generals and they will have 30 days to submit a plan for soundly and quickly defeating ISIS. So is the plan you've been hiding this whole time asking someone else for their plan?
No.
Got your question. Got your question. Because if he's going to convene generals to generate a plan, what the hell does he need to convene generals for if he's already got a plan? What he would do is convene generals, tell them what his plan is, and tell them to institute the plan.
But when I do come up with a plan that...
He just said when he does come up with a plan, which means he hasn't come up with a plan yet. Now watch, he's going to completely reverse himself in the same breath.
like and that perhaps agrees with mine or maybe doesn't. I may love what the generals come back with. I will
But you
compete.
have your own plan.
I have a plan, but I want to be, I don't want to, look, I have,
Now, he just said when he comes up with a plan, and then less than a minute later, he says he has a plan. Well, which one is it?
a very substantial chance of winning. Make America great again. We're going to make America great again.
Okay, he just repeated that, and every time he gets frustrated, he falls back to that line, make America great again, make America great again, in order, I guess, to get his thoughts back together.
I have a substantial chance of winning. If I win, I don't want to broadcast to the enemy exactly what my
But
plan
you're
is.
gonna
And let me tell you, if I like maybe a combination of my plan and the general's plan, or the general's plan, if I like their plan, Matt, I'm not going to call you up and say, Matt, we have a great plan. This is what Obama does. We're going to leave Iraq on a certain
But
date.
you're going to convene a panel of generals, and you've already said you know more about ISIS than those generals.
Well, there'd probably be different generals, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm looking at the general.
Wait a minute, how can it be different generals? There is, excuse me, in the military, a chain of command, okay? There's a chain of command. You don't just swap out generals, okay? You don't swap them out. Now, you can, dismiss, a general, okay? But then the chain of command moves the next person up. We're not talking about nominations for like the Joint Chief of Staff position, you know, such as that. We're talking about people that are actually running the operations. You can't swap those guys out, and that's exactly what he's saying. Oh, and the other point I wanted to make was, if he doesn't want to tell ISIS what his plan is, why did yesterday he announce to the world what his plans are for a military buildup? I would think that you would not want to let the Russians or the Chinese or anybody else know how many planes, ships, and troops that you're planning on increasing our military by, since they are, in my opinion, much more dangerous than ISIS. But that's just me talking.
Today, you probably saw, I have a piece of paper here I could show it, 88 generals and admirals endorsed me today.
It's a number.
And these are
Hillary
great. Well, it's
claims
not
more
really.
numbers.
It's not, yeah, numbers. The people that have been losing for us for a long period of time. I mean, the fact is, we have had the worst, and you could even say the dumbest foreign policy. Our results are so bad. We would have been better off had we never, ever spent $2 in that part of the world.
And he's right, because if Bush hadn't gone in there, we would be $6 trillion to the good. We would have had a lot fewer, actually we would have had no casualties over there, and we would have had no wounded. So in that statement, he is absolutely correct.
Recently received 2 intelligence briefings.
Yes, I did.
Did anything in that briefing, without going into specifics, shock or alarm you?
Yes.
Did
Very
you
much.
learn new things?
First of all,
in that
I have
briefing?
great respect for the people that gave us the briefings. They were terrific people. They were experts on Iraq and Iran and different parts of the world, and Russia. But yes, there was one thing that shocked me, and it just seems to me that what they said, President Obama and Hillary Clinton and John Kerry, who is another total disaster, did exactly the opposite.
Did you learn anything in that briefing, again, not going into specifics, that makes you reconsider some of the things you say you can accomplish, like defeating ISIS quickly?
No, I didn't learn anything from that standpoint. What I did learn is that our leadership, Barack Obama, did not follow what our experts and our truly, when they call it intelligence, it's there for a reason, what our experts said to do.
How?
You know something? I think he just pissed off the CIA or whoever is responsible for briefing him, because number one, he just threw them under the bus. I think he lied, to be honest with you, but if he didn't lie, he just threw them under the bus. The CIA is an intelligence agency. Their job is to provide intelligence. What the executive branch or the president does with that intelligence is up to him. They don't make recommendations. They just give you the information. Okay, your generals, etc., they can make recommendations, but the CIA doesn't make recommendations. So if these guys made recommendations, there's a problem, and if they didn't, he's lying.
And I was very, very surprised in almost every instance, and I could tell, I had pretty good with the body language, I could tell they were not happy. Our leaders did not follow what they were recommending.
How do you tell that somebody is not happy from about the information that they're giving you from their body language? I mean, you could tell obviously when somebody's body language reflects how they feel, but how do you know if their feelings are based on the information they're giving you or based on something else, like they got a headache or their wife kicked their ass or something like that?
Hallie?
I'm with former Army Captain Sue Fulton, who was a member of the first West Point class to include women. She served as a Signal Corps officer in Germany. She's a Democrat, and she has this question for you, Mr. Trump.
Mr. Trump,
Hi, thank you very much.
thank you. Do you believe that an undocumented person who wants to serve in the U.S. Armed Forces deserves to stay in this country legally?
I think that when you serve in the armed forces, that's a very special situation, and I could see myself working that out, absolutely.
So she's saying has already served in the armed forces or wants to serve, plans to serve?
Plans to serve in the armed forces. As you know, that under DACA,
Yes.
we already have people who are undocumented
I
who are serving.
think military hold those people. Now, we have to be very careful. We have to vet very carefully. Everybody would agree with that. But the answer is it would be a very special circumstance, yes. Thank you.
Okay, just so that you know, Trump doesn't know what the policy is. Number one, if an undocumented person wants to join the military, they obviously don't have a green card. What the military does when they make it known that they want to join the military, obviously they hold them to it, but they expedite the obtaining of a green card for that individual. Then, after that individual, does his service and obtains an honorable discharge, he is automatically eligible for U.S. citizenship. But I don't think Donald Trump knew that.
Thank you very much for your question. Hallie, you have another one?
I do. Alex Rumkowski was an Army staff sergeant assigned to special operations. He was stationed at Fort Bragg and was deployed to Afghanistan and other places across the Middle East. He has not decided who he will vote for yet in November. And you have a question for Mr. Trump.
I do. Mr. Trump, as you know, tensions between the United States and Russia have been at the highest level since the Cold War. In your first 120 days of presidency, how would you de-escalate the tensions? And more importantly, what steps would you take to bring Mr. Putin and the Russian government back to the negotiating table?
I think I would have a very good relationship with many foreign leaders. I think it's very sad when you look at Barack Obama, as an example, lands Air Force One in China, and they don't want to put out stairs to get off the plane. And he has to use the stairs that mechanics use to get up and down to fix the plane.
Yeah, that kind of pissed me off too. And what I might have done there is I would have told them they better run those stairs. We're not getting off the plane until they run their stairs up there. And Obama could have taken a nap until those Chinese got those stairs up there, because that, in my opinion, was totally disrespectful.
I wouldn't give him stairs. I think it's very sad when he lands in Saudi Arabia and he lands in Cuba, and there aren't high officials to even greet him. This is the first time in the storied history of Air Force One.
Okay, Donnie, you're pushing it. They had already negotiated when he went to Cuba exactly who was going to meet him, and he felt that that was acceptable because they wanted to do a giant, I guess you can call it a promo of him getting together directly with Castro, and they wanted it done at the presidential palace. So, nah, that you pushed that one a little too hard.
I think I would have a very, very good relationship with Putin, and I think I would have a very, very good relationship with Russia. As I said, take a look today. Take a look at what happened with their fighter jets circling one of our aircraft in a very dangerous manner. Somebody said less than 10 feet away. This is hostility. And I saw just 2 or 3 days ago, they looked like they were not exactly getting along. But I looked at President Obama and Putin staring at each other.
Let me stop him right there. I got a question. Okay, if the aircraft was circling and they got really, really close, but they didn't do anything, and Obama shows restraint, what were you going to do? What would they think you would do if they circled? Do you think that they would have believed that you were going to shoot down their planes or fire on their planes? You know, that's a cowboy mentality. That's why, it's called judgment and temperament, and you just don't have it. But anyway, let's go.
These were not two people that were getting along. And the beautiful part of getting along? Russia wants to defeat ISIS as badly as we do. If we had a relationship with Russia, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could work on it together and knock the hell out of ISIS? Wouldn't that be a wonderful
Let me ask you about some of the things you said about Vladimir Putin. You said, I will tell you, in terms of leadership, he's getting an AR president, is not doing so well. And when referring to a comment that Putin made about you, I think he called you a brilliant leader, you said it's always a great honor to be so nicely complimented by a man so highly respected within his country and beyond.
Well, he does have an 82% approval rating, according.
Okay, here goes Trump with the approval rating. The Russian system is completely different than the U.S. system. And when Putin wants somebody to disappear, they do. So I'm surprised that he didn't have a 100% approval rating. That approval rating is bullshit.
To the different pollsters, who, by the way, some of them are based right here. Look.
He's also a guy who annexed Crimea, invaded Ukraine, supports Assad in Syria, supports Iran, is trying to undermine our influence in key regions of the world, and according to our intelligence community, probably is the main suspect for the hacking of the DNC computers.
Well, nobody knows that for a fact, but do you want me to start?
That's why they said he's probably responsible for it.
Naming some of the things that President Obama does.
But you
at the
want to
same
be
time?
complimented by that former KGB officer?
Well, I think when he calls me brilliant, I'll take the compliment, okay?
Well, hell, how come when David Duke said that you were doing a great job and you'd be a great president the second time around, that you didn't want to take his compliment? It seems like whenever anybody compliments you, you don't have a problem with them.
Fact is, look, it's not going to get him anywhere. I'm a negotiator. We're going to take back our country. You look at what's happening to our country. You look at the depleted military. You look at the fact that we've lost our jobs. We're losing our jobs like we're a bunch of babies. We're going to take back our country, man. The fact that he calls me brilliant or whatever he calls me is going to have zero impact.
But the fact that you say you can get along with him,
I think I'll be able to get along with
do you
him.
think the day that you become president of the United States, he's going to change his mind on some of these key issues?
Possibly. It's possible.
It already has had an effect on you. You're already lining up with Putin's positions, especially on the dismantling of NATO. You're pretty much saying that you're going along with him on his invasion and annexing of Crimea, that you're willing to talk about it. On that, there's nothing to talk about. So he's already had an effect on you, my friend.
I don't know, Matt. It's possible, and it's not going to have any impact. If he says great things about me, I'm going to say great things about him. I've already said he is really very much of a leader. I mean, you can say, oh, isn't that a terrible thing? He called. I mean, the man has very strong control over a country. Now, it's a very different system, and I don't happen to like the system, but certainly in that system, he's been a leader far more than our president has been a leader. We have a...
Okay, in that system, it's designed for him to have complete control. And for you to denigrate our president, see, that's being unpatriotic. And people don't recognize that. You may agree or disagree with some of the things that the president does, and Lord knows I do. But number one, he is the president of the country. And if you don't respect the man, you should at least respect the office. And you don't respect the man or the office.
Divided country. We have a country where you have Hillary Clinton with her emails that nobody's ever seen, where she deletes 33,000 emails, and that's after getting a subpoena from Congress. If you do that in private business, you get thrown in jail.
Hallie?
Korea, here with me, was in the Army Reserves and spent 10 months in Iraq right at the beginning of Operation Iraqi Freedom. He is a Republican and has this question for you.
Good evening, Mr. Trump.
I
like what you say about supporting veterans and how they're important. But I haven't heard what the actual plans are to continue that support beyond words. How will you translate those words to action after you take office?
Well, I love that question because I've been very close to the vets. You see the relationship I have with the vets just by looking at the polls. In fact, today a poll came out, and my relationship has been very good. I have a very, very powerful plan that's on my website that you possibly saw. One of the big problems is the wait time. Vets are waiting 6 days, 7 days, 8 days. And by the way, Hillary Clinton 6 months ago said the vets are being treated essentially just fine. There's no real problem. It's over-exaggerated. She did say
She
that.
went on after that and laid out a litany of problems within the VA.
See, okay, and there's Trump again. It's like every question he's throwing out a Clinton or Obama attack, and there's another, let's call it a misrepresentation that he attempted to make against Clinton that Lauer corrected him on.
I mean, she made up half of the things she said about me. I'm telling you, she said she was satisfied with what was going on in the Veterans Administration. Now, Under my plan, if you've got to wait, and by the way, people are dying online. They're dying, waiting to get to see a doctor. They're waiting 5 days and 6 days. Under a part of my plan, if they have that long wait, they walk outside, they go to the local doctor, they choose the doctor, they choose the hospital, whether it's public or private, they get themselves better. In many cases, it's a minor procedure or a pill or just a prescription, and they end up dying because they can't get to see the doctor. We will pay the bill. They go outside, they get a doctor, they get a prescription, they do what they have to do, and we pay the bill. That is something that I have been praised. And by the way, I never said take the VA, take it the Veterans Administration private. I wouldn't do that. Too much respect for our people. I would never do that.
Okay.
I heard it was said that I said that. I would not do that. But I do believe, when you're waiting in line for 6, 7 days, you should never be in a position like that. You go out, you see the doctor, you get yourself taken care of.
Hallie, you've got...
All right, and he got a little defensive there because Clinton said the other side, but she didn't say specifically him. And it is the Republicans that are trying to throw around an idea of taking the VA private. But as he stated, he specifically did not say that.
Another question.
I do. Rachel Fredericks, who specialized in aviation's operations in the Marine Corps, serving stateside. She lost 2 friends to suicide, and you now struggle yourself with PTSD. She's a Republican, but leaning towards you, still undecided a little bit too. Rachel, you have a question for Mr. Trump.
I do. Mr. Trump, I wanted to ask what your plan will be to stop 20 veterans a day from killing themselves.
And actually, it's 22, and it's almost impossible to conceive that this is happening in our country. 20 to 22 people a day are killing themselves. A lot of it is they're killing themselves over the fact that they're under tremendous pain and they can't see a doctor.
Okay, like real quick, she said 20, he said 22, then you saw the look on her face like, nah, it's 20, and then he modified his answer to say 20 to 22.
We're going to speed up the process. We're going to create a great mental health division. They need help. They need help. They need tremendous help. And we're doing nothing for them. The VA is really, almost you could say, a corrupt enterprise. If you look at what's going on, as an example, Matt, in Arizona, where they caught people stealing, and they can't even do anything about it. They can't even fire the people. So we are going to make it efficient and good, and if it's not good, you're going out to private hospitals, public hospitals, and doctors.
I can't believe he called the VA a corrupt enterprise, but he did. And as far as people being in pain, there are a tremendous number of people that are in pain every day, and those people, for the most part, aren't the ones that are committing suicide. So I think he's wrong on that one as well. As a matter of fact, I know several people that are vets that have situations that call for them to endure pain ever since they got out, and they're nowhere near suicidal. So, but anyway, let's go on.
And one more.
Thank you very much.
Donald Day here, who served as a radio operator in the Marine Corps in the Vietnam era. He had tours of duty in Southeast Asia and in Europe. He's also a Democrat and has this question for you.
Mr. Trump, I have a daughter who was interested in joining the service, but when she researched the military, she saw the stats on sexual assault and decided not to go. I have a concern about the rape of women in our armed forces. As president, what specifically would you do to support all victims of sexual assault in the military?
It's a great question, and it's a massive problem. The numbers are staggering, hard to believe even, but we're going to have to run it very tight. I, at the same time, want to keep the court system within the military. I don't think it should be outside of the military, but we have to come down very, very hard on that, and your daughter is absolutely right. It is a massive problem. But we have to do something about that problem, and the best thing we can do is set up a court system within the military. Right now, the court system practically doesn't exist.
In
It takes too
2000,
long.
I can't believe he said that. So he just denigrated the current system that's being utilized, and he really didn't give a solution to the problem, which, in my opinion, would be for there to be created a separate chain of command to report stuff like that, and for the prosecution to take place, and then for whoever the people that are involved in it, especially if they're working within the same units, for there to be a transfer of either one or the other parties while the matter is being adjudicated.
2013, on this subject, you tweeted this, quote, 26,000 unreported sexual assaults in the military, only 238 convictions. What did these geniuses expect when they put men and women together?
Well,
That was a stupid comment, and it's going to hang them.
it is a correct tweet. There are many people that think that that's absolutely correct, and we need.
Apparently, you are one of the people since you tweeted it. See, he's got a history of tweeting stuff and then wanting to back away from his tweets by claiming that he was just retweeting something that he either saw or somebody else tweeted. You can't get away with that.
Have a
So
strength,
this
and we
should
need
have
to
been
have.
expected, and does that mean the only way to fix it is to take women
It's happening.
out of the military?
And by the way, since then it's gotten worse. No, not to kick them out, but something has to be happening. Right now, part of the problem is nobody gets prosecuted. You have reported, and the gentleman can tell you, you have the report of rape, and nobody gets prosecuted. There are no consequences. When you have somebody that does something so evil, so bad as that, there has to be consequence for that person. You have to go after that person. Right now, nobody's doing anything. Look at the small number of results. I mean, that's part of the problem.
So many of the issues that we've talked about with you, Mr. Trump, tonight, and Secretary Clinton are so complex that even career military people and career diplomats and politicians have trouble getting their arms around them.
Right.
You've had a very different background in business. So nobody would expect you to have taken over the last 20 years really deep dives into some of these issues. But I'm curious about what you're doing now. What kind of research are you doing now? What kind of homework are you doing? What kind of things are you reading as you prepare for the day in 2 months where you might be elected the next president of the United States?
Well, in the front row, you have 4 generals, you have admirals, we have people all throughout the audience that I'm dealing with. Right here is a list that was just printed today of 88 admirals and generals that I meet with and I talk to.
How much
I've
time are
also
you spending
found
on this?
a lot, and I'm doing a lot of different things. Don't forget, we're running a big campaign. We're doing very well. I'm also, and I'm very much giving it to my children and my executives to run. I'm also partially running a business. I'm campaigning. I'm running a business. I'm got a lot of hats right now. But we're doing very well. But in the meantime, I am studying, and I'm meeting constantly. You see General Flynn, and you see some of the folks that we have, and they're scattered throughout the audience. So we have admirals, we have generals, we have colonels, we have a lot of people that I respect. And I think I've learned a lot, but I think also, I really feel I have a common sense on the various issues that you're talking about.
But you said in a speech today, you said, history shows that when America is not prepared is when the danger is the greatest.
And we're not prepared.
Will you be prepared on day one, if you're elected president of the United States, to tackle these complex national security issues?
100%.
No.
Again, she made a mistake on Libya. She made a terrible mistake on Libya. And the next thing, not only did she make the mistake, but then they complicated the mistake by having no management once they bombed you-know-what out of Gaddafi. She made a terrible mistake on Libya, and part of it was the management after effect. I think that...
Yeah, she made a mistake, and she was experienced. So what does that make you? You're inexperienced, so you're more likely to make even more mistakes. You just made the other side's argument for them.
We have great management talents, great management skills, and I have to totally...
Those management talents are really suspect. You fired like 2 campaign managers. What was that? Corey Lewandowski, and then you just got rid of Manafort. You turned around and hired, well, you did one really good hire, that was Kellyanne Conway. But now you hired Steve Bannon from Breitbart, who's a racist, and he's got a lot of baggage. Then you hired another guy that's got a lot of baggage, but he's a specialist on doing Clinton hit pieces. I think his name is, I think it's Bosey or Borsey. Anyway, and he's in one of the top positions in your organization. So your judgment on people may be a little suspect.
Okay, but remember this, I've found this subject and these subjects of interest all of my life, Matt. This hasn't been over the last 14 months. I've found these subjects of tremendous interest. These questions, they don't ask business people.
Let me
these
end in
questions.
kind of the same place I started. Have you given much thought, Mr. Trump, if you're elected president and commander-in-chief, to that moment where you're going to have to make that first decision that puts American men and women in harm's way?
I think it's the most difficult decision you can possibly ever make. You're talking about death, and we're talking death to not just our side. We're talking death all over. I would be very, very cautious. I think I'd be a lot slower. She has a happy trigger. You look, she votes for the war.
But
She
have you
goes into
thought about
Libya.
personally the emotional burden of that
I
moment?
think it's a tremendous burden. I think there is no greater burden than anybody could have. I've been preparing this for a long time. And, you know, my theme is make America great again. We're going to make America great again. But, Matt, we've also got to make America strong again. And right now we are not strong. Believe me, we have a depleted military. We're the greatest people in the world in our military, but it is very sadly depleted.
The Republican nominee for President of the United States, Donald Trump.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
All right, that's the end of that. Honestly, Clinton was a lot better prepared. You know, she got pretty much hit on the first question as far as the email server and security issues. But after that, she pretty much was able to handle most of the questions in a fairly positive manner. Trump just, he glosses over things. He really didn't show a lot of depth. He got frustrated a couple of times. It took him all of like a minute and a half to start attacking Clinton and Obama. So, I mean, that's just my opinion. Obviously, I'm going to check out Fox and see what they have to say. Anyway, this is going to be in 2. It's just way too long. It's going to be in 2.